Betty, you want to tell us where you were born?
I was born in Greenfield.
Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Yes.
Okay. And did you go to school in Greenfield?
No, I was just there because that, Franklin County Hospital.
Franklin County, okay.
My folks lived in Leverett, so.
Uh-huh. So what school system did you go to?
Well, grade school I went in Leverett, because that's where we lived. And then for high school, we went to Amherst.
Amherst High.
Yes,
Okay. And can you tell us what year you graduated?
1938.
1938. Once you graduated from high school, where did you go from there?
Well, I worked for several years doing housework, babysitting, that type of work. And then I went to Bay Path. And after that, I worked for a year in the accounting department at Savage Arms in Chicopee Falls. And then I started the training for being an airplane mechanic at Westover Field.
Mm-hmm. What did you do at Savage Arms?
I was a typist in the accounting department.
I see.
I got pretty good at typing figures.
Uh-huh.
In fact, one time after I'd been there about a year, they gave me a letter to type, and I couldn't type a letter. I typed all my words in columns. It was a very funny looking letter. I had to do it 3 times before I could make it look like a letter.
The training that you received as far as engineering is concerned, was that a training course for young women, or?
Yes, it was strictly for women. We had to learn blueprints and different kinds of things, math and how to use tools and what the different ones were and how to use them, whatever they felt we were going to need. And different parts of the plane and how things were put together and all the miles and miles of tubing went in there, they were all color coded, and we had to learn the color codings and just which ones were which.
Do you remember what year this was that you were getting this training?
I think it was end of 42.
So
Yeah.
This was during the
It was during the actual war.
during
yes.
the war, and you were being prepared to work on various types of airplanes, or?
It was just in general. We got the various types after we got there.
Mm-hmm. And where did you work on these planes?
Where?
Yes.
Well, at Westover Field.
It was a,
I mostly was more in the shop work. Wasn't so much on the actual planes, but I did go back and forth, worked on some of them, depending where the need was. If they needed somebody to work on the planes, I went out and worked on the planes, and otherwise I worked in the shop fixing the various parts that went on the planes.
were these mostly women that were working on the planes, or were there some men
Oh
involved?
yes, there were men.
There were.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we had men supervisors, but the women worked right along with them.
What exactly did you do on the planes themselves? I mean, did this involve riveting? Did it involve?
I didn't. They
You
had
didn't?
riveters, yes.
They
but
did.
I didn't. Well, yes, I did it. Now and then, there wasn't too much. I was in the hydraulic part, but now and then, when the sheet metal had extra work, or the hydraulic wasn't much doing, why I have worked with the riveting. I worked with the engineering too, and with the engines too, and different parts. But my main job was hydraulic.
Did you enjoy the work?
Some of it, like all jobs, there were some parts of it that were stinky, and some parts that were interesting.
How many hours did you put in a day?
Usually, for a while, we were doing, sometimes we did 12, sometimes 8. It was 6 days a week. So it was long weeks. I also worked nights from 4 to 12:30.
So you had 2 different types of shifts, a day?
Yes, day shift and a night shift.
Right.
I never worked the other one that went from midnight to morning.
How many years were you involved in this?
Altogether about 3. Because after the war ended, my job ended too.
I see. Did you have any unique experiences while doing this kind of work?
Well,
Anything come to mind?
remember now and then that a plane would be coming in that they thought something was wrong with it, and they'd circle for several hours before they land because they didn't dare land. And they had all the fire engines and all the ambulances and everything else out on the field, just in case it crashed. But none of them ever did. They always managed to come in safely. And we had now and then some of the big shots come around and put on we had a big show for them.
What kind of a show?
Oh, everybody had to be all spiffy and stand up at attention while they walked out of the plane into the hangars or wherever they went. Lots of saluting and that sort of stuff. Civilians didn't have to, but the military ones did. Because we worked some with the military themselves.
Westover Air Force Base was portrayed in movies during that period of time as one of the key Air Force bases in the country. Do you recall that feeling? I mean, was it a constantly busy air base with planes coming in and out?
Pretty much so. I mean, there would be times when things were slow, and sometimes it was very busy with the planes coming.
What kind of planes did they have at Westover at that time?
Well, one time it was a bunch of P-47s, and they had a group of B-24s, had the B-17s, and the P-51s. They also had the B-29. I mean, those were the big ones that were there, groups. But they also had a lot of I think every kind of a plane came through there at one time or another. Maybe just one or two, or a bunch of them, but those were the main ones.
Did you ever get an opportunity to talk with some of the pilots or some of the crew on those planes?
I don't know, we talked to a lot of the different military people, whether they were actual ones that were on the planes I think we did sometimes talk to the ones when we were working on the planes, that they came around to see what was being done and how fast we were going to get it done for them. Just checking.
Were you able to determine from these conversations how the war effort was going?
No. It was more or less just, how was the plane going?
I see. Would they discuss with you the problems that they had with the plane that they had been flying, or?
Well, it was more with the supervisors, I think. Mm-hmm. They didn't do it too much, but they did come around now and then to check on what was going on.
Did you find that the planes, the different types of planes, had characteristics that would give them problems or give the pilots problems? In other words, was there any particular plane that was a problem type of plane?
Not that I can remember. No. It was just problems in general. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they would say they were real dirty at times, and we had to try to clean them up a little bit.
During your time working at Westover, did you have time to get out and socialize and go get out and see the town itself, the area?
Well, of course, I lived in Springfield, so
you did.
That was,
okay.
Well, most people did live in the general area because like to be near your work, and of course gas rationing and all that sort of thing. But socializing, when you went to work at 4 and got out at midnight, you didn't have much time. Most of your socializing, you didn't have time for much, because most of that is done in the evening. But sometimes we did things after work, or the movies had early movies for the people that worked nights. There were things that were done special for people, for night workers. And so we took advantage of those.
So your environment was primarily wrapped up with the work that you were doing over at Westover.
Yes, say 6 days a week, you didn't have much time to do much else.
What happened after the war? Was that program phased out?
Yes. For a while, I worked in the separation section, doing the paperwork for the ones that were getting out of the service. But then that ended too.
And then what did you do?
Let's see. Then I went home and worked in Greenfield in the tap and die for a while. Greenfield tap and die.
What kind of work did you do there?
I was in the billing department. I was checking bills.
Did you find that
Boring.
that was going to be my next question? Yeah.
Figures are not my best work. I have a very strong tendency, I transfer them. I'm never sure when I get finished whether my figures are right or not. I took an IQ test once. One of the adult education courses was have your IQ tested. And the instructor was very impressed that I could repeat figures backwards better than I could forwards. The trouble is I do it automatically. I don't do it intentionally. So my figures were very apt to be twisted around. So it's better I stay away from figure work.
So do you have good memories during those war years of the people that you were associating with?
Yes, I had very, very nice people that I associated with. One of them was one of the Granville brothers that did the BG up at the Springfield Airport. I worked with him some of the time. He was one of the workers there, and I had worked with him.
Was this before they
They
built the BG?
No, the ones that built the BG, yeah.
Oh, okay, they built.
That was back before
I see.
for the World War II.
I see. That in itself, I think, is kind of historic because the BG and the Granville brothers are extremely well known in and around the Western Massachusetts area
Yes.
and throughout the country.
And one of them was working there at Westover, and I did work with him. And so most of the people were very nice. Like anywhere, there's always stinkers, but not too many.
Not too many stinkers.
No, most of them were very nice.
Right.
I have kept in touch with one girl, very good friend of mine from school and time up there, but she died a couple of years ago.
Do you think that that women pretty much came into their own during those war years, more self-sufficient?
Yes, we had to be. When your husband's 3,000, if you have a husband, he's 3,000 miles away, you've got to look after yourself. You can't run to him to put a new screw in or this, that, or the other thing. You've got to do it yourself and make your own decisions.
Do you think that you and your group of women who were working over at Westover were kind of the forerunner of the women's movement,
Well,
in a sense?
in a sense, I suppose. I mean, any of the women that went out and worked during the war, I think it would apply to all of them. The ones that were in the service as well as the ones that were civilian workers.
Well, I think you've had a very interesting career. What are you doing now?
I'm retired.
You are retired, and what do you do to keep busy?
Well, I volunteer down at the Long Meadow Senior Center. And I can find plenty of things to do. Try to keep my house up in the yard and look after a neighbor's dog. And we do dog sitting, for a neighbor's dog. It keeps us busy, and just in general. I can't see anybody being bored that's able to move because there's so many things to be done.
Well, we thank you for coming in and sitting and talking with us.
You're very welcome. I hope I gave you a little more information as to what you wanted.